So it is very important to have a health system, an integral health system.
En el paradigma de en ocasiones tener que deshacerse de todo su patrimonio acumulado durante sus años más productivos para hacer frente a estas enfermedades.
So they have they are vulnerable because of the economical problem, because they cannot afford all the costs of paying health care and health issues. Several countries have said that universal pension is a solution. We don't have to speak only on coverage, but also to the problematic around the diseases, because economical diseases is not going better. So let's say that economical security, it's a principle in old age that guarantees human dignity, so they can use all their available resources. And so we can focus that to make better its a healthy aging.
Pisos de protección social que justamente parten de que la parte social debe hacer sostén a la sociedad en varias etapas de la vida. Nosotros lo vamos a enfocar a las personas adultas mayores para que
all the concepts that we are going to talk, such as social protection floor, we are going to focus on old people to guarantee the life dignity. Especially another topic that we have to discuss: to whom is the responsibility to face these challenges? There has been several propositions. They have been stated that it's an individual obligation. There are some others that state that there is a state responsibility. What are we going to state here is that it's a shared responsibility to get better all the situation of these old age people, especially for those who are in the vulnerability state. Today we have a very special panel. As Dr. Corrales have stated, we have several international organizations represented in this table. ILO, UNAM, and other several institutions are represented. I'm going to give the floor with the first presentation of Dr. Helmut Schwarze. Helmut Schwarze is head of the Public Finance, Actuarial and Statistic Unit at the Social Protection Department of the ILO in Geneva since December 2021. He holds a BA and a PhD in Economic Development and Economic Sciences by the Federal University of Panama, and in Curitiba, Brazil, and the Free University of Berlin, Germany. He was a researcher at IPEA in Brasilia and Secretary of Social Security and the Bolsa Familia program from 2015-2016 in Brazil. At the ILO since 2010, he was Senior Social Security Specialist for Latin America and the Caribbean based in Geneva, and Senior Social Protector and Economical Development Specialist from Central America, Mexico, and Cuba, based in Mexico City from 2016 to 2021. We thank you, Doctor, especially for the fact that you are accompanied from Geneva. We give you the floor. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good day to all of you. It's a great pleasure to be with you. I thank you. I thank the invitation. And a very cordial greeting to Dra. Daisy Corrales Diaz, Director of CS. Álvaro Velarco is not present, General Secretary from CIS, but I also greet him. Dr. Diego Terán, thank you very much for organizing this event, this webinar, to help with our participation. I also want to greet the panelists. It's a special pleasure to re-encounter Pablo Llaner, colleague on the Latin America Caribbean. So there are a lot of participants. I see a lot of friends on Social Security on Latin America and the Caribbean. I've been agreed with the organization a presentation on the world report that the ILO presented last year on social protection, and also we have a companion report for the global report that we presented on April, this past April. It is about a complementary companion report. What was the regional chapter for each region that ILO is present? And in this occasion, when we release this world report, we decide to make companion reports to focus the transversal thematical. You can find here all the links of both documents. They are available in Spanish and English. They are also available in other languages. There are also executive reports in different languages. The World Report has as objective to promote a panoramic view on social protection. Diego mentioned the concept of social protection floor, that are the guarantees that the countries are compromised to give all the citizens in social security subject. We also have a very important part on the report on how the pandemic of COVID-19 impacted on social security worldwide. I'm not going to go in this subject, but surely you have listened different analysis. So we are going to see the different measures that have taken on social security worldwide and in America and Latin America and the Caribbean related to the response on COVID-19. Then the crisis situation that we have go through and that we're still in it, it's preoccupying. And we have to look on how different politics have to fulfill all the objectives of the 2030 agenda. We have also a lot of tools that we upload to the ILO so you will have the most information on and statistic on social protection in the world. The colleagues that worked before my arrival. Last year I was still in Mexico. Now I am in Geneva, and my colleagues they had the success to update all the statistic indicators. And it is this database that we used was really a very wide coverage from the past edition. So it is difficult methodologically to make a comparison, a strict comparison with past reports. What we can say is that despite the crisis, there has been a tendency of increasing the coverage worldwide. especially in Asian countries, in China especially, that in the past years they have extension policies in social security issues. So if the average of worldwide, if we include China, they increase a lot. The, the data that resume this principle, the main message is that we have not covered even the half of the world population, at least one part of the social security. We are around the 46.9% of global population effective. That is an indicator to measure all the world progresses in social development goals. The goal 1.3, it would mean that 4.1 billion people still lack this social protection. Within the different regions, we can see that Europe and Central Asia and the Americas are above the average, and other countries below this average. There are really very important inequalities, as you can see in the Americas, and in other regions we have a lot of inequalities from within the regions, from within the countries. If we can look in big countries such as Mexico or Brazil, each of these Latin American countries, the heterogeneity is quite big. And one of the observations that have been done in COVID impact is that these inequalities have been increased. That is all the key messages of the inequalities that has been exposed despite the advances that there has been in social security issues in the past decades. Also, something that gives us hope is that the response on COVID-19 was very important worldwide. We are not in a situation where we can say that we have a recovery. This recovery before the attack on Russia to Ukraine is not very clear, was not very clear. What we have seen at the beginning of the year, our last monitor on the global work market show us that there is a development in two speeds. The more rich countries and the medium income countries, they have had a recovery on pandemic because they have had more access to vaccination and the different sanitary measures. They also have a certain possibility of investing in a tax response to pandemic in order to try to a solution to recovery, while the middle and low income countries they don't have a clear recovery path. So in average, at the beginning of this year, 2022, the world was still stuck. They haven't had a recovery trajectory. Of course, with the crisis of the war and the effect that they have generated, probably the scenario will be slower. So the key message of our world report, as well as the report from the Latin America and the Caribbean of each regions of the world, is that we are in a crossroad where we have to choose if we want parting from the experience of the response to COVID-19 and to the response that of a past crisis, or the clarity and the importance that we have on the importance on social security programs. If we want to go to a higher road, as we can say it in English, to accelerate this fulfilling of the development goals, sustainable goals, or if we want to go back to the past situation where the tax compromise was not done regarding social protection, they cut the budget on social security programs, and we agree on a half fulfillment of all these goals with a with a lot of inequality. That would be really fatal for the objective to promote social justice worldwide. Globally, in this graphic that I am showing you are the average. You can see the 46.9 would be the average, the total average that has at least one social protection benefit, or that it's covered by some of this benefit on social protection. So you can see that the benefits for elder people is a higher rate of coverage, and the unemployment benefits for unemployed men people are the one who have the least rate on social security. That is something that we are going to see also for Latin America and the Caribbean. It's also like that. And the indicators that were important, for example, the response capacity to respond to the crisis, on social assistance, the unemployment programs, the benefits for unemployment people, the programs on occupational risk benefits are being comparatively low in Latin America. The average of what for the world is 46.9, for Latin America and the Caribbean is 56.3%. In the 1.3.1 indicator on the goals. We are not going to have time to look on details. These numbers, the red numbers, are from Latin America and the Caribbean. The green columns is the world. You can see that in average, Latin America is above the world average, except maternity. And in old age, I want to focus the attention. There are 2 perceptual points below the world average. So I see that there is a space to keep widening the coverage. And in other issues, you can see unemployment in Latin America. It's below, we are below on the world average. We are really low compared, for example, with Europe and Central Asia. It was a very important issue that we had very well developed, and that is perhaps one lesson that that we can learn from this COVID-19 crisis. This is the global indicator, and then I'm going to show another graphic for pension and elder people. We have here Latin America in the center of the graphic on the average, and all the different countries and territories where we could take data and indicators. You can see that countries in the Caribbean and the South Cone, several countries, for example, Mexico, went up comparing with past years by the universalization of pensions. Costa Rica, it's also below of the average of Latin America and the Caribbean and region, and several countries of Central America and the Andean region are below the average on Latin America. It is very interesting to say that the big countries, Argentina, Colombia, Mexico, that has a big amount of population, represent a very important part of the uncovered population. For example, Brazil, it has almost 70%. So it's still 30% to coverage. So it's 300 million people. So it's a very meaningful component in Latin America population, to mention an example. The same with other Latin American countries that has a big population. So all these efforts to universalize these social protections are very important in all these countries. And they are going to shake, in the case of Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, and Colombia, would increase its coverage levels on Social Security. So in the next one, older population covered by an old age benefits, and that they make a very good combination between contributive regimes and individual regimes, have been surpassed the world average. And there have been countries that haven't made universal these benefits because they don't have a world market, or they have an informal market, work market. And the contributive regimes cannot reach the average to universalize these rights, even though they exist some social security benefits and pensions practically in all the countries of Latin America and the Caribbean. I would like to show you quickly an example, the World Database dashboards that you can you can have this information in the link below from the ILO webpage. You can look for these dashboards on social protection, and you can select by region, by country, and you can have different database of each of the countries where we have recollected data. In Latin America, COVID-19 has had a profound impact about trends. It was very severe. We have to say that, for example, indicators on work market have diminished more than 1 decade. For example, the children in the work indicator, we have lost all the efforts that we were been doing in this decade on children labor. So there's been a lot of challenges still on the reactions that were in social protections worldwide and in Latin America has demonstrated that those countries that had as any social protection systems could launch quickly uh, health protection and income protection in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic. In those countries who didn't have this social protection policies, in the majority of the cases, the responses were temporary. In several cases, there have been no time to measure them for the specific needs of the different group populations. For example, in this dashboard data, we can see that few of the programs have specific gender rules, but they are lessons that we will have to develop for the future. So the dashboard information we have, besides the coverage dashboard, we have the social protection response monitor. This monitor on social protection can also select for the world, for the Americas, for the region, for the specific countries. You can also select only COVID-19 measurements on all the measures before the 2020 period. We have all the reforms on social security in the different parts of the world. There is a web page where at the ILO where it is described the information and the link to look for each of the measures, so we can see which have the kind of measures that the different countries has adopted. Of course, the most important is the protection on employment, of health, the protection on unemployment, which has been the most important measures in the world and in the Americas. In America, especially because experience of cash transfers, poor population was the most benefited. The topic on the increase on social spending on the four guarantees of the social protection floor in Latin America and the Caribbean. You can see that there is a diversity of situations. We identified that the poor investment in social security is responsible on low coverage. Latin America is in a similar situation on the medium high country's income. In Latin America, it would correspond 7.5. So Latin America and the Caribbean, in order to fulfill this social protection floor and health protection benefits, would have to have a very important effort of financing, and that would be to formalize jobs and businesses, increasing domestic revenues. I would also like to mention that the ILO has a book on the pension systems models and the position on these pension systems. In technical area, we made a study on the reforms that were introduced that introduce private components. There has been we don't have a position against the private pillars, but we are against the replacement on public systems This would be the multi-pillar pillars that the ILO defends for the worldwide, which is a mixture between the different pillars. I would like to tell you that at the end of 2020, it was unperceptible in Latin America, but there has been a tripartite roundtable with 15 countries, some of Latin America, and there is a report on the contents that we discussed where there were agreements on the three stakeholders on the principle regarding pensions. There has not been an agreement on which kind of results we had to have, but indeed of the evaluation methodology on pension systems. And that is the conclusion on the World Report and the report for Latin America. The search for a recovery centered on the human being. And as the ILO International Conference for last year said, thank you very much. I stay here. And I'm still glad to continue the discussions. Thank you very much, Dr. Helmut. You have given us a wide panorama on the challenges and the topics on social protection, especially before the COVID-19 crisis has been put several challenges, and we are trying to recovery, and all the efforts that we reached in the past decades. Precisely, we are nowadays face a panorama that implies to have more energy to reach the impact. So the COVID-19 is not that as deep. I'm going to give the floor to the Maestra Maria Laura Oliveri. She's a specialist in the Labor Market and Social Security Division of the Inter-American Development Bank based in Quito, Ecuador. She joined the IDB in 2013 as a consultant in the same division and has also been a consultant in the Social Protection and Health Division between 2018 and 2021. Previously, she worked at the World Bank in the Human Development Department for Latin America and the Caribbean, and in the Poverty and Equity Global Practice. She has worked for the International ILO and the Ministers of Economy and Health of Argentina. She has experience in labor market, social protection, and poverty issues in the Latin America and the Caribbean region. Maria Laura holds a degree in economics from the University of Buenos Aires and a master's degree in economics from the National University of La Plata. Welcome, Maria Laura, and I give you the floor. Well, good day, everyone. Thank you very much, Dr. Teran. My name is Maria Laura Oliveri. I'm a sectorial specialist on the Labor Market and Social Security divisions of the Inter-American Development Bank. I would like to thank the Inter-American Center for Social Security Studies for this invitation and for the possibility to present the work that from the Inter-American Development Bank we are developing in this very important topic, which is economic security in old age. Through IDB, we are working to make better the lives and in the future from within the regions, having a platform of knowledge exchange and strengthen on pension systems. From this context, from the bank, we are very glad to participate and share our 2025 visions that highlight the importance to strengthen the social security floors and to strengthen the labor formal in the region. This presentation resumes the work that we have been doing with my IDB colleagues. So I'm going to talk on which are the challenges on the region to guarantee economical security in all ages. Latin America is the region on the world that has been aging more quickly. We can see in this graphic how the age distribution is changes. So the people of more than 50 has been increasing. We can see the graphics of this demographic transition is changing the demographic profile in the region. At the right, we see that the dependency reason is changing from the 65 population and more is changing, as well as the 64 people is changing. One of three people would have more than 65 years. This implies great challenges in the pension systems because we will have more demand. Even among the elder people, it's going to increase the floor of 80 years on more. In 2050, the existence of the demographic bonus in the past decades has offered a big opportunity, but it requires to have public policies to afford it. The pension system has still facing important challenges because we have no formal workers. Also, there are several difficulties on the sustainability on the short, medium, and long term in the systems and in equity sufficiency. The way that we face these challenges will have a very important if taxes consequences. In coverage, Latin America, as I was saying, is characterized by a high rate of informality. And this is a very important topic in pension agenda. And the participation on the workers in the system. It is because in average in Latin America and the Caribbean, only around 40% of the workers has a pension. It is difficult to think that in a short term, the system will cover more people. The problem on informality is aggravated if we see the income quintile. There is a great variability among the different income quintiles. If we see the first income quintile, we can see that one of each 10 is covered, workers is covered. While if we see in the fifth quintile, more than around the six from each 10 workers is covered. Something similar happens if we see the coverage on the pension systems according the educative level. In all the region, the countries of the level of the region, the workers that have a higher education have more access to these coverage systems. The lower, the workers in a lower education are out of the pension system. This is translated in the pension system, translating in low coverage system capacity. In Latin America and the Caribbean, only the 36% of the population older than 65 has access to a contributory pension. We have a very different coverage in the several countries on the region. We have, for example, Uruguay, who has a high contributory pension, or we have countries where it's lower than 20%. Unfortunately, this has been very extended, as Dr. Helmut Schwarzer stated from ILO. the majority of the countries nowadays have these kind of schemes. If we take into consideration the contributory benefits as well as the non-contributory benefits, the coverage of elder people is 69%, but the expansion of this coverage is not universal, as we can see. Part of the problem is due to the design of pension systems, and I give you an example here. In the left, we can see that the lower deciles, so more participation on independent workers and workforce, and in the majority of the cases are informal workers. They have a more unstable income and they are out of the pension system. On the right, you can see the higher deciles are the ones who are covered in the passive age. The higher deciles, they receive a higher proportion on the income proportionally. A second topic is related with sustainability of the system. As we can see, to the 2050, the public spend in pensions is going to aumент. In 2010, the percentage was 3.4 of the GDP, and in 2050, our projection would be to increase up to 9.1%. This implies a lot of problems in the tax issues that the region is facing. For the 2050, by the 2050, Latin America and the Caribbean will be the same age as the OECD and will spend more on pensions with substantially lower coverage levels and tax revenues that are a fraction of the OECD levels. This is because the countries of the region offers relatively high benefits. The replacement rates we can see on average, the replacement rates of defined benefit systems are high. It's 55% on the base salary, and the definitory contributory system is around the 40% of the base salary. What do we know on sufficiency? We can see that in the region, 50% of the elderly people have access to a pension, receive less than the minimum wage. And this is not enough to have a dignified life on the elder age. This is due to the inequalities on the system. The rate contributions are relatively low. A worker in Latin America has a 11.4, when in the OECD the average is 18.4%. There are in the region there are these two extremes where the contributory rates are more of the average, and in the other extreme there's been countries like Haiti and Honduras that does not reach even the average of the region. The retirement ages are lower regarding OCDE. In Latin America and the Caribbean, the average of retirement is 60, and in other countries of the OECD are 64%. Another linked topic is the low density of cotization. As we can see, in 4 countries of the region, there is a high percentage of people who has no any affiliation to benefit pension systems. And in particular, the situation is worse for women in every case. This is also because the context of formal and informal work. the pension system would be able to deliver enough wage to cover the minimal life needs. We have to rethink the key system and also to establish a design that the next generation would have dignified benefits in its old age. Facing these challenges is critical for the countries of our region. As COVID-19 increased the preoccupation on the pension system topics in the region, the unemployment, the loss of jobs has been dramatically. We estimate that 31 million jobs were lost. Today, at least half of these jobs have recovered. And as our ILO colleague, the result is still uncertain. How can we, as we can observe in this graphic, so you can see that in July 2020, the fall of the loss of employment was really critical, and up to September 2021, we are still recovering. Women lost employment disproportionately among women. Moreover, the recovery of women's employment is slowing down. There are some transversal topics that are important in the aging context. In this sense, we cannot keep to mention the gender gaps at the work markets. Women participate less in the work market. And the rate average in the region is 8% less than men. The salary are 26% less in related to men, and they are less opportunities to enter to a formal job. Women have three times more of non-remunerated job or domestic issues. Women also participate in partial jobs regarding men. For example, in the region, in Costa Rica, 31% of occupied women made it in a partial time job, while in men, it's only 11%. The gender gaps are faced also with important challenges, because women are less probable to have a pension, and also a high rate is not covered. They receive a lower income pension. In the high gaps in both coverage amounts and the accumulation phase. We have a gap between men and women. On coverage rate is 9% between women and men. The contributive pension gap, even if it's been lowering, we have still in the period 2050-2019 is still of 19%. In the women, the legal age of retirement is less, but the women live more than men. Environmental topics are really important nowadays, because they have been doing very important effort to integrate this concept of sustainability in the development model. And pension is also very important because they will have to lead another way where social, environment, and good government topics are involved. Globally and regionally, we are seeing environment, social, and governability mix to adjust and incorporate this factor in risk assessment and portfolio handling. Technology has also been a key on pension system. The institutional capacity face a challenge to implement measures oriented to advance in all the challenges of coverage, sustainability, and equality. Digital revolution, automatization revolution, and digital platform is a new topic on pension systems because they offer new ways of saving, sharing risks, and consolidates pension system, as well as a lot of new communication tools that were not available in the past. Additionally, the pandemic has brought new challenges, as well as the need of quick digitalization on pension payment to avoid contagious. Pandemic has also stated important opportunities to respond to challenges that we face now and in the past and in the next years to go out of the crisis with a more sustainable growth. A poll of digital transformation of the IDB indicates us preliminarily that a low percentage of social security institutions have nowadays digitalized laboral histories. Institutions have not fomented this. There are really slow institutions with a organizational structure to implement this digital structure. We at the IDB are centered in these challenges. We have 3 strategic priorities, that is coverage, sustainability, and equality, as well as these transversal topics, general gender and migration topic, climatic change, and technology and institutionality. So for us, our main objective is guaranteeing the social and financial sustainability of pension systems in the current context of a rapidly aging population, which is a very important challenge. For IDB, its priority to track a path to go out of the crisis. I invite you to check these our two initiatives, the Black Web and strengthen institutionally pension systems of the region through a process of digital transformation and promoting dialogue, experience exchange, and good practices. By other side, we have the Saving Lab that is recently transformed in social security digital laboratory, especially nowadays in a post-pandemic world. There is this question: how can we design new products of insurance that are adapted to flexibility of independent workers? This laboratory train and evaluate these different programs in this area. Thank you very much for the possibility of presenting our vision in this event. And I am open to any question or suggestion. Thank you very much, Maria Laura. It is indeed a very important panorama it is interesting to make the reflection on the challenges that implies economic security in old age, but not only understanding one single old age, but we have to talk on the different old ages that we are facing. We are talking from a gender perspective, from ethnic and racial perspective, on other elements as the environment that these people are developing to prepare different scenarios to receive a contributive pension. We are facing two much more complex scenarios where Latin America is a region where have high rates of informal job, and precisely we have to reconceptualize this social security concept under this tripartite dialogue between workers, employers, and the government, and widening to a concept that is universal, independently on the work position that each worker is. Thank you very much, Laura. And now we are going with the participation of Dr. Isalia Nava. She's full-time researcher at the Institute of Economic Research at UNAM and is the actual academic secretary at the same institution. She holds a degree in economics from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, master's degree in demographic and PhD in population studies, both from El Colegio de México. In 2012, she won first place in the Gustavo Cabrera Severo Award in the category of population received. She received the National University Distinction Award for Young Academics in 2017. She is part of the National System of Research Level 1. Her research interest and publication are on demography and economic impact and population change, economic and population aging, gender, and economic. She has participated in the preparation of reports of the ILO and the National Population Council and the UN for Latin America. She's responsible for the research project Applied Economic Empirical Research Strategies. She is co-responsible for the project Prosper and Sectional Scenarios on Demographic Aging in relation to social security, pension system, healthcare, and personal care as critical issues of national interest established by CONACYT. Among her most recent publications are the coordination of the book Population and Aging, Past, Present, and Future in Research. The chapters Economic Security or Insecurity of Elderly in the face of the COVID-19 pandemic. Changes in the age structure and its implication for employment and social security, and some articles, social security and retirement, one of the major national problems in Mexico, the unequal participation of Mexican women in the access to and benefits from social security, and intergenerational transfer by gender and the economic effects of demographic aging in Mexico. Isalia, it's a great pleasure to have you in this panel. I give you the floor. Thank you very much for the presentation. Good evening to all. For me, it's a pleasure to share this panel. I thank the CS and Dr. Teran for the opportunity to participate today. The presentation that I'm going to make today is centered in analyze the main issues on the economic security in old age in Mexican case. I have divided this presentation in these sections. Old aging, dedicated more time on the concept and antecedents in economic security and all this security economic in the Mexican case. And finally, to check how is it linked the concept on economic security with poverty in old age. We're going to start with demographic aging. But I think it's very important to emphasize the importance on the aging demographic age in Mexican case. Our country, as well as other countries on Latin America and the Caribbean region, has been the classic demographic transition of high rate of mortality that now are low and controlled. This structure of states several challenges. The main of them is linked with one of the characteristics on which this process is presented in the region. And it is related with the quickness of demographic phenomenon. While Europe has between 150 and 200 years to have the population that has, our country will reach these numbers in 4 decades. So we can see how the demographic pyramid has been reduced. So there is a higher participation in middle ages, and we are in a process of aging process, demographic transition. In absolute terms, this participation of old people is going to be permanent. It's projected to be permanent. This quickness of demographic aging we have in Mexican case, they didn't have enough time to consolidate the economic and social development to face the demands of this sector of the population. While in other regions, especially in Europe, they had more time to face the needs that these demographic circumstances were stating. In this chart, we can see that in the next decades, it's expected that we have a population pyramid even more aged. It is a phenomenon that that has some challenges, very important challenges. We're going to see some characteristics, and I'm going to refer to the feminization of the aging. There is more survival on women in comparing with men. In Mexico, in 2019, life expectancy in Mexico was 70.5 in average, and in the women, it was superior almost by 6 years. In the men, in 2019, it would be 72 years, and in the women is 78.1. This more survival in women case, we have to state which are the characteristics on how they arrive to the old age, because this is not translate that of a better life quality. They arrive with several deficiencies that is conditioned in this last part of the year. But it's because it's very important to consider all the inequalities existing between men and women due to this feminization process at the old age. We have this demographic aging in Mexico and Latin America and Caribbean region. This more participation of elder people states challenges. We recognize that this aging process affects several characteristics. For example, health and the attention of chronic health diseases, and in the increase on the caretaker demands. Another challenge that I want to make emphasis today is related with economy, with economical security that has to face the old age population. This is very important, the importance of economical security, because it allows us to analyze the situation in which old age people arrive. This concept uses that Guzman uses is very useful and allows us to analyze very well the situation of elder people. We understand the ability of having independently an amount of economical resources that are sufficient and regular to guarantee a good life quality. It's very important to have this economical security in old age because it is translated in life quality because it gives independence, it improves self-esteem, and allows a participation in the life as citizens with full right citizens. And we can identify that old age people, it has an economical security. We can decrease people in vulnerability and poverty. The importance to have economic security in old age is very important, and there are different dimensions on the economical security. When we see the level and kind of consume that old people have, it is very important to consider that pensions must guarantee to cover the main benefits and cost of health issues. As part of economic security, it's important to take into consideration economic position. This is to consider income that old people receive and compare it with the rest of the population, but also to compare the position from within the different groups of old people. It is very important to consider inequality not only by sex, but linked by different characteristics of the population. There are different factors that the most important are related with personal biographies, generational biographies, life cycle, individual and familiar, especially in a Mexican society, where it is relevant the support that family supports to old people. Another important issue is the social protection system. They are going to determine up to where the population will be able to have this benefit in this part of the life. To check the different economic security mechanisms, there are three main mechanisms. The first one is the economic participation, the social security, and contributive and non-contributing pensions, and it adds the familiar support. In Mexico and Latin America, these are the three economic security mechanisms. In the case of Mexico, we're going to check it. We can check which are the main income sources on the old people in 2020. We can see in work income, we can see important gaps and the income derivated by independent work in the case of men and women. An element that I would like to highlight is that in the case of Mexico, you can see in a subordinated job, they are superior in comparison with other job sources. In this mechanism, there is a less participation on the population. Only 60.4 of men and 4.2 of women receive this income. comparison with other income source. In the other graphic, we see the main income sources derived by transference. Here we can see a bigger participation in income that comes from non-contributive pensions. 1,279 pesos. It's a very low income, which are below the well-being line. Let's check more detailedly. Let's focus on income by work and the population's participation in economical activity. We know that a very important population group keeps participating in economical activities after 65 years. We can see these numbers, and a very important element to consider are the characteristics under which this population is working. There is a more participation, whether men or women, 8 by 10 women, 7 by 10 men are work in the informal jobs. In women case, the informal case is predominant, and in the men is the agropecuary for men. Women, the majority of men and women are independent workers in the marketplace. Work market is precarious. A lot of them, they keep working because they don't have a pension, an income that may allow to retire. The preoccupation facing this data is when it starts to appear diseases that force them to leave the economical activity, and they have to look for another income source. So it's very important to check the importance of the pensions. We can see that in Mexican case, between 2018 and 2020, there is an important increase in the non-contributory pensions. Because there is a reform in the fourth article for nowadays it's $62 American dollars, this pension, and it is received bimestral. This data made us observe that despite that this income exists, we still have a very high percentage of the population that does not have a pension, either contributory or non-contributory. In men, 20%, and in women, 29%, they don't have this protection in old age. Among those who receive any of this kind of pension, we can see that this number have been modified, as well as we can see this gender gap, and so the women are in disadvantage. We check some characteristics of these contributive pensions. We can find that these gender inequalities are going to remain. For example, we can see in men, they receive a contributory pension. It's by retirement, while in women who are receiving a pension is by widow, for being a widow. So this is how women are perceived by these pension systems, and under which this phase in this context. Another important element for Mexican case is the type of pensions that they receive by the institution which they receive this pension. The majority of the pensions are the pensions that IMSS is giving. But if we see the amount of these pensions are really, really slow. Less of a even for women, the income is really lower, despite the participation is more. The highest pensions in Mexico are different from IMSS and ISSSTE, but the ones who receive these pensions is a very low part of the population. This data allows us to see how, for Mexican case, we have a very little access to contributory pension, but as well as a low income, which is a problem for old people. So we have to look to explicative factors of pensions of the 2020 national poll. So we can see which are the probabilities to have contributive pensions only when the contributive pension is above the minimum well-being line. And we have factors that are added to these explicative factors are sex, group, age, indigenous language, disability, type of home. And we find after this regression logistic model, we find that the fact that being a woman reduce the probability of having a contributory pension, and it is related with gender gap and the less possibilities to go into the work market. And the explicatory factors are the education. As the population has more levels of scholarity, the probability of having a pension is more. Let's remember that the population that we are analyzing of 60 years and more, they have its first education years where the educative system in Mexico was not still consolidated, and the scholarity was not as high as it is now. This leads us that the old people in this old age who has higher scholarity levels is an element that we have to take into consideration, especially if we consider all the public policies that from the elements that are very important to consider in the analysis of this model is indigenous languages. The own advantages that this population is uh, they don't have the same opportunities to have a contributive pension. Another element to have to consider in non-contributory pensions, the variable of having a contributory pension to have the access of this protection on Social Security is the age. As the population is elder, it's more probable to receive a non-contributive pension. And for the contrary, scholarity reduce significantly the probability to have non-contributive pensions. Other variables that did not interfere in the probabilities to have a contributive pensions, well, whether you have or not a couple, a partnership. These results lead us to think on the importance to have a pension in old age and all the factors that help the population to have access to this social protection. An element that we talk on the definition of economic security is the one that I presented here. We can see in this chart that how the poverty situation of the people, elder people in 2020 did not make worse comparison with other population groups. And this is explained even we can see that the population in poverty decreased from 2018 and 2020. And it is explained by this reform of the constitution. So the possibility of all the population of 65 years and more would have access to this non-contributive pension. Nonetheless, we can also see that this is not enough to take this population out of poverty. As well, another important element to mention is the lack of access to Social Security between 2020, because between 2018 and 2020, it decreased as well. So which is the situation of the old population after the pandemic? Despite the population's condition in general Mexico worsened in poverty issues, this didn't happen with old people. So that is why it is important to have a pension in old age, in non-contributive pensions. As conclusions, it is very important to highlight all the challenges that Social Security faces in a aging, demographic aging dynamic that are more complex after pandemic. It is very important to consolidate the universal coverage. We saw that there is a very important percentage in old age that does not have a pension, a non-contributive pension. Therefore, they lack on economic security and all the consequences, negative consequences that may derive. It is very important to guarantee pensions that are enough. A big amount of the population does not have a pension that allows to cover the basic needs. And it is very important to consider scenarios over the economic position of elder people from tomorrow, which is going to be this economic security of elder people in the future, considering the actual characteristics of its populations. Education, for example, especially the characteristics on how they are participating in the work market, especially informality. It's very important to take into consideration inequalities regarding sex, uh, a difference between men and women that are very important, difference that are important to consider. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a very important, interesting panoramic to reinforce the concept of non-contributive pensions, or as some other call indirect contribute. It's a very good support to prevent any risk as pandemic COVID-19 signified. We give the floor to our fourth panelist, Pablo Yáñez, coordinator. He's a Dr. Pablo Yáñez, a research coordinator at the CLACS. From 1994 to 1998, he served as Deputy Director of Legal Anthropology of the Director of Prosecution of Justice of the National Indigenous Institutions. In 1995 and 1996 was part of the delegation of the National Indigenous Institute in the peace talks. Between 1998 and 2012, he had uninterrupted responsibilities in the field of social policy in the federal district governments. From September 1998 to December 2000, he was director of attention to persons with disabilities. And in the past years, he's a research coordinator of the sub-regional headquarters of ECLAC, where we have a wide range of publications regarding elderly. We give the floor to Dr. Pablo Yáñez. Thank you very much to CIS and CS by this kind invitation that you are making to us in this amazing facilities that reflects a very ambitious vision on social security, a very high and holistic on social security. My focus is going to be of a multidimensional approximation on social security in old age. I would like to start by some premises. One of them, and Diego had made reference of it, old age is not a problem. We have to see it as a civilizatory success. The fact that we are facing what we can see a massive aging and a prolongation of life expectancy, we have to celebrate as a big civilizatory conquer and assume that this implies very important transformation on the social institutionality based in some hypotheses that I'm going to refer later. The other element is that aging process is a demographical fact, but it is more than that. It's not only the modification of the population pyramid, but it is indeed a transformation of social structure and social relations. And therefore, this has transversal implications under the society and the social institutionality. A lot of the hypothesis of social institutionality, we have to check it. One of them clearly for the topic is to assume that at some point Latin American societies were going to diminish the structural heterogeneity, the very marked inequality, on work markets, and at that some point we were going to reach full employment, formal and permanent. And we have to remember as well that where the construction of this institution were built, it was assumed this rigid sexually division of the work between the breadwinner and the women confined in the domestic area for reproduction on the non-remunerated base. These were the hypotheses where these institutions were built. Another very important was the short aging. They were thinking that old age was a terminal stage light, and second, relatively short. And what we're stating now, that the old age is being wide, where there is not the idea that old age is a few years. So what we have is a persistence of a work market, precarious, informal, precariousness that also affect the formal part of the economy, a process of aging, massive aging, prolongation of old age, that sometimes is even longer than other life stages. So we are facing a very complex social fact. We can talk on demographic transition, but it must be also hand by hand on institution transition. The social institution that we have built was built by a type of society that is no longer. So we have to adequate and adapt and anticipate of the social institutionality regarding the changes on social and economic structure. Even we have to check this classification of 60 and more, 60 plus. It says very little because it was thought as a short old age. So what we have now is 60, 70, 80, even 100 years. So of course, it's not the same, the politics that we have to build for 60, for the population of 60 or 70 or even 100. In the childhood, we have a very distinct population cuts, and there are public politics for the childhood in these different stages. I suspect that something similar we will have to do in aging and old people. We were referring to several aging, and they have to be built and related by a social institutionality consisting in this big inequality and heterogeneity. Stating this, let's start for the importance and the relevance of the income as a component on social security. I'm going to talk of multidimensional focus that assumes that economic security is one of the main particularity. In this sense, the relevance of income, whether coverage or sufficiency or permanency, because one of the central problems of economic security is that there can be intermittent income. What we aim is that the income are permanent. There has been opening a new debate on the pension regimes. We are arriving to the moment in which generations that are pensioning by the structural reformation that was made in Latin America is revealing problems and limitations. And it is a debate that is taking place in Latin America. And in some cases, there have been concreting parametric reforms to allow that people that wouldn't have a pension by the amount of working weeks could have done it. Because also this pension system were based in the hypothesis of the permanent cotization, based on the fact that it would be formal employment permanent mechanisms, and indeed after 20 years they have been. That's why we are facing a situation that this fundamental hypothesis of a system is a hypothesis that is not adjusting to the real behavior on economical structure. So it's a very important discussion is coming on pension systems, where ILO is making, as Helmut stated, they are publishing reflections on a balance that had happened in this past 25, 30 years, and how are we going to think pension systems for the future. And also, the discussion is on the table on the reach of the guaranteed incomes, basic income, going to differ. I think that we have to go beyond this concept of contributive and non-contributive pensions. So yesterday they were talking on direct and indirect pensions. In countries in which a lot of the taxes is based in indirect taxes. So I believe it is time to check this division. It's very rigid region, because in a lot of countries, these contributive systems have non-contributive regimes. So I believe that it would be good to pass this rigid contributive, non-contributive idea and state that we have to state that they are an indirect and non-direct contributions. We can even make a calculation of the people who are contributing, because the average is a very small amount of the so-called non-contributive pensions. Mexican advancement in universal pension for elder people, we have to highlight it. By the way, in reference to the last speech, sometimes calculated coverage only based in the income spent polls are not very precise, because there is a tendency of sub-declaration. There was also a discrepancy when I was working at the government on the administrative registers and the calculation of people that were receiving the universal pension for other people. So it is probable that the coverage is higher than the polls are reflecting. especially if we check the administrative registers, because generally there can be discrepancies as well, that there is a declination rate. Mexico City is only 3%. People who could have this pension, but they deny it. As we have said, the universal pension, it was universalized by the reform of the Article 4 of the Constitutions, where the access was universal for people 60 and more. This was modified because now it's a universal access after 65 years. Also, they reform the disability part. But the element here to highlight is not the very wide coverage, but the decision taken that to talk about the amount of the pension. As we have stated is a small amount. Last year was increased significantly, but the presidential offer is that by the end of this administration, it would be the equivalent of 3,000 pesos by people. It's more or less $150 monthly. That may signify a very important in the poverty measurement of income. And poverty income logic, it's more than the minimum well-being lines. I believe that they are poverty lines instead, but it's a little bit more of the rural poverty line, and it's approximately 75% of the urban poverty line. When measuring it, and in the pandemic context that Coneval made, it decreased the poverty among the old age population. And therefore, to feel all the universal coverage after 65 years and to reach that it's 3,000 Mexican pesos, it's very probable that the poverty of elder people decreases significantly. With a very important social investment. The estimation that we have now is that 3,000 pesos for approximately 11 million people is going to represent 1.4% of GDP only to the payment on universal pension for older people. I think that this is very important. It is similar to some other Latin American experiences as Renta Dignidad in Bolivia. But I think it's a very important topic to discuss, to keep discussing, highlighting the relevance of income as a well-being source. I'm going to highlight the insufficiency of income as a source of well-being. What does this mean? This means that available income for elder people is not only depending on the amount of the pensions that are general low, whether direct or indirect, the available income is going to depend on the guarantee on the access of benefits and that are not in the market. That is a central element. A pensionary system can guarantee a dignified life only if the social is working, the social environment is working. If you have to buy health services, it's this pension is not sufficient. It's not enough. Even if you have to buy an insurance, this is not enough. So the access to the access of health services and social security services is one of the main topics. When the universal pension for elder people in Mexico City started 22 years ago, one of the requisites were that you couldn't spend that on medicine because it was assumed that parallelly has built the program of free medicines. But if you want to have all these medicines and social security by the private sector, the universal pension will never be enough. Social security is also to have access to some goods for the well-being. Health issues is it's quite evident, but I mentioned that I have the impression that we are not incorporating in our analysis is housing. The housing access for elder people is becomes central because property is a big option, but renting a house is really problematic for low incomes. So politics to an adequate housing for the people is a very important issue. A security on having a house, legally having a house, holding a house, and the importance of zero tolerance to patrimonial violence against elder people. How many times we have known that elder people are dispossessed of its own house. So the housing element is something that we have to incorporate in the valoration of economic security, because health and housing are probably the more expensive issues. And whether we can secure these both elements, it will be very important for the income. Another issue that several countries have advanced is the right of public mobility. In Mexico City, since Cuauhtémoc Cárdenas government, there is a free access to public transportation for elder people. It is really relevant for elder people because of two reasons. Because in several occasions, elder people they have very low opportunities to go to the public space. The fact that public transportation is free for the elder people can be a very important element to economic security. In Mexico, especially in Mexico City, that public transportation it's more or less cheap. We cannot see it as a problem. But there are countries where the transport is really expensive. Let's see the difference, for example, in Mexico, Estado de Mexico and Mexico City. It is very clear the difference on the prices on public transportation. So politics to help elder people, mobility, maybe an element to help its economic security. Another big issue is the build of the caretaker system, building the caretaker system. It's evidently that the need of caretaker systems is growing as we grow older. And in our region, it's high feminicized and familiars. In this sense, the building of a caretaker systems with a social gerontology perspective, it's a central element to advance. And in this sense, if we have a good health system, mobility system, caretake system, as well as pensions that are relatively just or more dignified, and indirect pensions that would give a basic coverage to elder people, we could advance toward economic security. Without a social state, there cannot be a real economic security. It's not only an income issue; it's also an issue of access of services. Thank you very much, Maestro Pablo. Doubtless, one of the perspectives that you are stating is crucial in this expectation on how can we start to restate the scenarios towards future. Just not only taking a concept created facing another demographic panoramic, just as you stated, the fact that we have a population covered by a minimal income on a universal pension, we also have to take into consideration another some other issues. I would like to state some questions that were in the chat box. Please, you have 2 minutes if you want to answer the question or any question that you have taken of this panel. The question are stated in 2 scenarios. The first one is, what do we do facing the informality, the increasing informality in our countries where youths how can we do facing this informality context? And the second question is, what can we do as an entrance route for those countries that decided to implement in its pension systems in the topic to retire part of its saving and that they lost weeks of organization? I will give you the floor as we were participating. So 2 minutes, please, for Dr. Helmut. Thank you very much. The first question, I tried to answer it. There is not an easy solution for the formalization or for the effort to formalize the jobs. We have to make reformulations on pensions to strengthen formality and institutionality. There is no a way of thinking social security systems without social contributions The financialization by taxes in Latin America is very important. We have in Latin America we have 4% of the GDP of the taxes. The reforms that we have to do are to expand universal access to benefits, as Pablo has very well stated, to also to services, to make also reforms to the systems to increase the legal coverage and to strengthen the institutionality in order to fulfill the laws. There are a lot of countries who have a low coverage levels because freelancers are not, does not, or rural workers, domestic workers does not, are not contributors. So it is necessary to have a formalization strategies in several moments. The second question is the questions that allowed to take out money of these accounts, of their personal accounts. It was a desperate situation because in the moment was necessary. There was no unemployment insurance or protection for unemployment people. So these schemes were allowed. I don't see how or to expect that these people reaccumulate those savings. It's going to be, we will need to make some calculations on how can we cover these gaps that will remain, and to make reforms on these individual accounts, because these individual accounts are not going to be enough to fulfill the economic security and protection of the majority of the people. Thank you very much. So Maria Laura has the floor right now to answer the question. So now we give the floor to Isalia. Thank you, Diego. I just want, related with the questions, the panorama is really difficult for the younger generations. The main exercise that has been doing imply a decrease in the access of pensions that are enough, for example, with Afores, as by the other way, as Pablo was stating, the importance of the families in the caretaker systems. That is something that is going to be modified in the next generation in this context of demographic transition, with the reduction of fertility rates, with migration. It's going to be more difficult to have this support that comes from the families. So it is a very sad panorama. As Helmut was saying, I believe that it's very important to consider that principle of intergenerational justice. You have to guarantee the conditions of the present generations, and on the future generations must be guaranteed. we have to take into consideration these elements if we want to make some reforms. For the young people, it's very important to take into consideration some issues in terms of health issues, because the next generations are going to reach even more disease with chronic degenerative diseases that are highly cost, and suddenly that they are not having a special emphasis in self-care in young generations. So when they arrive in to the elder age, does not arrive in a precarious conditions. I do think very important that to take into consideration this increase on life expectancy, we have to think on some actions and measures towards, because it's modifying all the life cycle, education. We have young people that are making postgraduate students even more younger. So we are still working in a very basic model. So it is very important to have a conscience by all the society, a cooperations to identify what it is required and which changes are needed for future generations. Thank you very much, Isalia. Uh, Maria Laura there. So give the floor to Maestro Pablo. Thank you very much. Let's start with another premise. A society with low income cannot have a high pension income. So therefore, it's not only a topic of social security, but for an economic structure. It is a need of a structural change to go to society with more income salaries and more productivity, a better insertion on work market. If we don't make this transformational economical structure, this weakness are expressed in work markets and as well in pensions. So we need pensions are a reflection of the salaries. And in the way that we have a society where low salaries are predominated, which is the realities in Latin America, well, it's going to be almost impossible to have better pensions. So we need to go through an economical structure more dynamic, innovative, that high that distribute the productivity, income, and where indeed we can go to a less precarious work work market. The other issue related with these pension systems is that economical structure, it's a matter, and it matters a lot. And sometimes we divide social institutionality with economical structure, but really it's there corresponds a correspondence between the two. I would call for a discussion of eco-social discussions, saying economic and ecological discussions. So we can restate a new social pact. Another topic is a big discussion on what is the nature on social rights, and the access of social benefits. Basically, we have three modes of access. Whether you are poor, you can do it by laboral condition. If you are formal or informal, you can qualify. And there are rights regarding the people, the specific individual people. So we have to establish which are the rights specifically that corresponds to the labor market, and which are the rights that corresponds to the general human rights. How can we translate this in politics? In politics, how are how how are we going to go from a Bismarckian system to a beverage scheme, which are social? We have to identify which are social rights and which have to be only related with the work rights. We have a very important transformation task in our region. Thank you very much, Pablo. Precisely closing this dialogue, we can say that from within what is being stated in the panelists, we can say that it is necessary to state a new concept on the term of aging and how this is being transformed. When these concepts were created, it was a low scholarity population, and they thought that the retirement was the last part of their life. The elements discussed through this webinar allows us to think that we are in very different conditions. Our countries, we have increased scholarity years, and the pressure that is made in the work market, whether formal or informal, are more prolonged age. We have to re-evaluate this scheme and talk that the population is not going social life only to satisfy the needs of the work market. For example, the fulfillment of each one's life. So we cannot focus that one of the aims is a recommendation of income. We have to understand that they are social rights. Building well-being and dignity concept are not only based in economical income from all the institutions. It's important to recognize we thank the attention to all of you, and I'm going to give the floor to Dr. Corrales, who is going to close the activity. Thank you very much to all the panelists and all the people that has been in this very important activity. I believe that this has been a very important reflection morning on how we started talking about economic security, and we ended up talking on well-being. Economic security come with some very important factors that not only in the vision that the state has to contribute with a pension, whether he had or not contribute for this pension, but it is a transversal aspect in all the society. Economic security, as we listen in the different speeches, is fundamented in some concept from the diversity of human being and genetics, for example, and the means where we develop, that will be the quality of aging. And that will depend on all these factors mentioned very importantly here. We saw from within all the factors, all the difference that still exists in gender issues, the difference that related in environmental topics, the possibility of having the opportunity to develop in a society where there been access to education, to housing, to social security, important factors that we have still to discuss. For example, the access of the food, where a lot of times pensions is only going to paying rent or medicine. So, and the elder people still go is so also severe problems of addictions. So we wouldn't finish this morning if we make a conscience of all the factors related. What can we do from these institutions? Each of us there is a complementarity among all these institutions, while a lot can be oriented to generate dialogue and exchange and contribute to a healthy public policies. Some other can develop projects. Some are related to these structural changes from that Cepal was stating. How can we see this phenomenon? It's very important because we are seeing from a negative point of view, and we can say that the situation is terrible because we are living times just after World War II or after any pandemic that has been living all these factors. We're facing for a very difficult time of crisis, but in this time crisis, the best ideas are generated. It is an invitation for all of us as stakeholders, as people, as human beings, start to contribute for this just generation that are awaiting us. There are generations that are been growing and that we have tools that we didn't have related to education, for example. All the advancement that we have had on of artificial intelligence and technology, we have a different world. So we have a world that we have to fight for. And a lot of the paradigms that are already established, for example, the environmental issues, there is some propositions. We have to fight against unemployment. We have to recognize informality because it's very difficult if it's generated a job that is not recognized. The people would have the ability to build a formality. So we need to incorporate them. It is also a call that all the government agencies open a dialogue as well with with the society, because we all are part of this state. We have to fight and we have to dialogue on these topics. Talking on aging is not only to talk of old people; it's also to talk on the life cycle. And this life cycle starts from the womb of our mothers. And we have to contemplate all of the life stages and try that all people arrive healthy. And if we don't have the basic factors to develop all the life cycle, old aging becomes a very difficult situation, as we were seeing with chronic disease, surviving with a pension, a low income pension, where all that pension is going to be spent in medicines that will not guarantee a dignified life. So we all have to be working together and seeing this situation from a positive standpoint of view, seeing old age as a prize, because not all reach this age, and trying to have an integral health that not only consider physical health but all the determining factors such as mental health, education, housing, transportation, caretakers. And we have a more interesting panorama in which the continual improvement is possible if we work together and we collaborate, especially to promote from the different institutions dialogue tables, but a productive dialogue where we can have actions taken to reality and to improve the context in the and in the thematic to make the provision for the future generations that require from the childhood the access to a good alimentation, to have physical activity, etc. So we have a very important task that leads to very important structural changes in, and to consider the widening on human rights, because here we don't talk only of the difference of aging in the topic of diversity, which have limitations. We have to talk as well of disabilities and the different kind of aging according, for example, the religion and a lot of cultural factors that we saw. We talk, for example, what the related on the indigenous groups. We all have right to age dignity in a dignified way and try to go to. Thank you very much for your participation. Thank you very much to all the participants.